The club was loud enough to blur my thoughts into rhythm. Lights pulsed, drinks flowed, and everything felt lighter than it should have. I was laughing with friends when a man I barely knew pulled a stool close to the bar. Someone joked, someone nudged me forward, and before I really thought about it, I sat briefly on his knee. It felt playful and harmless, a split second meant to be forgotten. Someone snapped a photo. I laughed it off, assuming it was just another silly moment lost in the noise of the night. I didn't feel guilty then. I didn't feel reckless. I felt detached, like the usual rules didn't apply inside the music. I didn't post the picture. I didn't even ask for it. By the time we left, I'd forgotten about it completely. That's the thing about jokes. They feel small when you're inside them. You don't realize how heavy they become once they leave the room. Morning came with sunlight and unease. My phone buzzed with notifications I hadn't expected. Messages from friends. A missed call from my fiancé. My stomach tightened before my mind caught up. Then I saw it. The photo had been shared, tagged, passed along without context. There I was, smiling, sitting where I shouldn't have been. It looked worse than it felt. Moments don't carry their intentions in pictures. I typed a message to my fiancé, then deleted it. I didn't know how to explain something I hadn't meant, but couldn't undo. When he finally called, his voice was calm. Too calm. He asked one question. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" I said yes. He said he'd already seen the photo. Silence followed, thick and final. He told me to come over, not to argue, just to talk. That was when I realized jokes don't get to decide how they're received. When I arrived, he was sitting at the table, phone face down, posture controlled. He didn't accuse me. He didn't raise his voice. He asked me to explain the moment, not defend it, just explain it. I told him the truth as clearly as I could, that it was stupid, thoughtless, meant as a joke, nothing more. He listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. Then he asked something I wasn't prepared for. "Would you have been okay if I did that?" The question cut through every excuse I had ready. I imagined the photo reversed, the roles swapped, the same casual laughter. The answer settled heavy in my chest. No, I wouldn't have been okay. He didn't say, "Got you." He didn't smile. He leaned back and said quietly, "Intent doesn't erase impact." That sentence changed the entire conversation. It wasn't about jealousy, it was about respect. He told me what he saw when he looked at the picture. Not betrayal, but carelessness. A lack of awareness of how actions ripple beyond the moment. He said it made him question whether we shared the same boundaries. I tried to reassure him, to promise it meant nothing. He nodded and said he believed me. That surprised me. Belief wasn't the issue, trust was. Trust isn't just about fidelity, it's about judgment. He explained that marriage means choosing the relationship even when it's inconvenient, even when it's tempting to play along. I realized then I hadn't been proving freedom. I'd been proving immaturity. The room felt smaller as his words settled in. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed. And disappointment, I learned, is much harder to argue against than anger. I asked him what he wanted to do next. He didn't answer right away. He said he needed time to understand whether this was a one-time mistake or a glimpse into how I handled attention. That hurt more than any lecture could have. I wanted to fix it immediately, to say the right words and make it disappear. But some moments don't disappear. They reframe everything. He told me something else then, that the joke wasn't sitting on someone's knee. The joke was assuming our commitment would absorb it without consequence. I apologized without qualifiers, without explanations. I didn't say but. I said I understand. For the first time since the photo surfaced, I truly meant it. Understanding doesn't undo harm, but it changes how you carry it. Over the next few days, we talked more honestly than we had in months, about attention, validation, and the quiet ways people test limits without admitting it. He admitted that seeing the photo made him feel replaceable, even if only for a moment. That admission shook me. I hadn't intended to make him feel small, yet intention hadn't protected him from that feeling. I realized how easily humor becomes a shield for insecurity. How just a joke can be a way of flirting with boundaries without taking responsibility. He didn't threaten to leave. He didn't punish me. He asked whether I was ready to be engaged, not just in title, but in behavior. That question stayed with me long after the conversation ended. Friends expected drama, a breakup, a scene, something to gossip about. They didn't get one. What they got was distance while we recalibrated. I unfollowed accounts, changed habits, made choices that didn't need announcing, not to prove anything, but to align actions with values. He watched quietly, not policing, just observing. Trust, he said, rebuilds through consistency, not grand gestures. I learned that consequences aren't always loud. Sometimes they arrive as restraint. Fewer jokes, clearer boundaries, more care. The photo faded from conversation, but the lesson didn't. It changed how I saw myself in public spaces, how I understood respect when no one was watching. At the club, I sat on another man's knee and thought it was just a joke. When my fiancé saw it, what he said next wasn't funny. It was clarifying. He didn't accuse me of betrayal. He showed me the gap between intention and impact. That moment didn't end our relationship, but it did end a version of me that confused attention with harmlessness. I learned that commitment isn't tested by big betrayals alone. It's tested in small moments, when you decide whether the laugh is worth the cost.